Woke up. Wake you up. Wake that ass up.
Program your alarm to Power 105.1 on iHeartRadio.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, DJ Envy, Jess Hilarious, Envy and Jess on here, but LL Cool Bay, Loren LoRosa is, and we got a special guest, man. He was recently appointed to Zohran Mamdani's transition team. Definitely a friend to the room. The good brother Mysonne is here. What's up, Mice?
Thank you for having me. What's going on with y'all?
Can you autograph this for me, man?
Can you autograph this for me? Crown boss. This is the first. Let me see. This is the first time I actually see. I don't even have one of these papers.
You ain't see it?
No, I didn't even see it like in person. I just seen it online. Wow.
Well, before we get into that, what does your role on Zohran Mamdani's transition team entail?
It entails being an advisor, being able to talk about policies that we think should be implemented from criminal justice, from public safety, also appointments, people that we think should be a part of his staff that in that area that we feel best fit what it is that he wants to accomplish and what represents us in the community.
So what power do you have to actually influence policy? Because, people will be like, oh, this is just optics. You get somebody like Mysonne who's well respected in the city. Like, what power do you have to actually influence policy?
It's 20 of us. It's 20 of us in that committee, right? So we sit down and we talk about policy. We have different meetings. We send, okay, this is the policy we think we should enact. And he gets to look at that based off, what we come together, and he makes his own decision. We don't just tell him what to do. All we can do is advise and give recommendations.
Hate or love Mamdani, right? People have been yelling that they want this. They want people in the community, from the community, helping to make decisions. Why are people so upset that it's happening?
Because, people don't like change, especially the people that don't want to see change. They want to make it seem like it's a bad thing. It doesn't make sense that you mad that somebody who's experienced the criminal justice system on both ends, who was wrongfully convicted inside prison for 7 years, came home and started working with youth inside prison, started dealing with reform organizations, who has influenced policy within prisons, who knows the mind state of the young kids that's going in and out of these prisons, that's actually working with him. That doesn't make sense that somebody would be mad. So I love what Mayor Mamdani Mayor-elect right now, is doing right now, because he's really trying to encompass what New York looks like. The people inside New York, the voices of New York. I'm about to start doing roundtable meetings and convenings with formerly incarcerated individuals, in which we sit down and we talk about what it is, what it looks like to actually be productive members of society. What do we want to see? What do we realize is wrong with the system, so he can actually get a real understanding of what's happening inside the system.
I try not to take too many things personal, man, but when I saw this on the front page of the New York Post, you labeled as a crime boss, Mamdani appoints rapper who served 7 years for armed robbery as justice advisor. It actually offended me as a person with a criminal record, because it's like, damn, Mysonne went to prison in 1999? How old are you, 20?
Yep, 21.
21. You're a 48-year-old grown man now. You've done nothing since you came home but giving back to your community, but tried to teach others not to follow this same path, and you still can't escape that?
Well, I say all the time, what the devil means for bad, God will use for good. They got a good picture, so I actually like this picture.
You're wearing your boycott black
That's
murder
exactly
shirt
what I'm
and
saying.
hat.
When you look, it's boycott black murder on the shirt and the hat, and we actually sold out. So you can go buy some more on the website if you want to at untilfreedom.com. But it actually shows what it is that I represent. So what happened was, for me, when I received so many congratulations, it's like people didn't even realize that they were actually trying to discredit and defame me. People were just like, wow, you're doing something with the mayor. You're actually, a part of the justice advisory system with the mayor. So it didn't even get the effect that they wanted to get. So it was, for me, it was like, you know what? I'm not going to allow them to utilize that to discourage me from the work that I've been doing for the last over a decade. With Until Freedom, we've been doing this anti-violence work. We've been doing criminal justice work for the last over a decade. So for me, it's like, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to utilize this notoriety, and which I mean for bad. I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to make sure that, the word gets out. I'm going to make sure that I represent formerly incarcerated and justice impacted people properly. So when they say, oh, we can't do it, I want to be a representative to say that Mysonne showed you that it's definitely possible and you can be successful.
did that, because I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, like, you know what I mean? But did this moment and how, like, a New York Post or, you know, wherever else mentioned you, did it turn up something new or like make you think of like, okay, we need to make sure we're doing this over here too? Like, was there like a blind spot that like you saw through all this?
I don't know if it was a blind spot, but it definitely was a level of urgency. It made me feel more, you know, motivated to do the work that we've been doing, to motivated to bring certain voices, because, you know, I say this all the time. There's so many formerly incarcerated people who are doing so many positive and, you know, just really good things that nobody talks about, you know, and that's the thing I want to highlight. I don't want, because a lot of people formerly incarcerated don't believe that they can do certain things. They don't believe that they can be successful. And most, the public perception is that too as well. So I want to be able to highlight people that come home that have been doing this work for years, who've been doing positive things for years, who've been productive members of society. You know, they always, people act like they don't know. Allen Iverson was formerly incarcerated. You know, like it's so many people that we talk about that was formerly incarcerated.
Malcolm X.
Don't know. Malcolm X was formerly incarcerated. And it's like we look down on the stigma. And when we talk about formerly incarcerated, a lot of people don't act like they know that black people are the highest falsely accused and exonerated people in the world. So a lot of us, like I said, I was falsely accused of a crime. I spent 7 years in jail for a crime I didn't commit. I went to trial for my case. So it's like a lot of us, just because there's the stigma of us being arrested and incarcerated, they make it seem like we're a threat to society and we just criminals. And some people have committed crimes, but some people, like when you go to the justice, when you go to the prison, right, it's supposed to be rehabilitation. So if a person does his time and he comes out and he's productive, why do we act like he can't be productive?
And they're focusing on your past, but that is the very thing that qualifies you for the role. How do you feel about that?
I think that is so ironic. Or it's just disingenuous to say that when we got a president that got 34 felonies and his whole cabinet is full of criminals, right? So, but we look at, especially black people, we act like we can't do certain things. And I say all the time, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. You know, sitting in the cell for 7 years, you know, seeing how the injustice system works, seeing how inmates are treated and how people are sitting there. A brother just was killed. You know, he was executed. And they found out 4 or 5 years later that his DNA didn't match and he was actually innocent. So these are things that happen every day in the justice system. And people like myself who've actually experienced it, who understand that and see the blind spots, because somebody who just went to school and studied law never understood those realities. A lot of times, I've watched a lot of elected officials. I've watched people who studied the law and then they actually got incarcerated. And they came home and have a conversation with me like, yo, I didn't realize what was going on. And they become the biggest advocates for prison reform and for, you know, those type of things. So I just think that I've been blessed with the opportunity, you know, and God created for me for such a time as now. You know, I never understood when I was incarcerated. When you sit in jail for 7 years for a crime you didn't do, you don't understand what you're in there for. Especially you got $1 million record deal, you sitting in this jail cell, and you like, why the hell am I sitting in jail? And it was days that was my conversation. And, you know, but I always said that I'm not going to allow this system to break me, because every day that I don't grow and I don't learn and I don't do things positive, then the system won. So when I came home and I started realizing, while I was in there, I started realizing that our people are overly incarcerated, especially young black and brown males. They're overly incarcerated. Some of them are just lost. They don't even identify with things. So I came home with a different perspective, is to say, you know what, I'm going to pour into my community different. I'm going to empower these young boys. I'm not going to make them think that prison is some way to be, but I'm also not going to make you believe that because you was in prison that you can't be successful. And I wanted to come home and model that behavior. And I think for the last 20 years that I've been out of jail, you know, my crime happened in 99. It's 26 years later, and y'all still talking about a crime that happened 26 years later, but y'all not looking at the track record for the last 20 years that I've been home and I've been on this ground, put boots on the ground and doing this work.
Are you going to take any legal action against some of the headlines and stuff that came out?
I mean, I don't know. I'll discuss it with some lawyers and see what happens. But really, right now, I really just want to focus on just doing this work. You know, shout out to me and Mamdani and his team. You know, my team, Unfiltered Freedom, we've been doing this work. And, you know, like I tell people, this is a volunteer. I'm not getting no check for this. This is a volunteer, and because I really believe in what's supposed to be going on in our communities. You know, we're going to start forums where we talk about civic engagement with formerly incarcerated. We talk about, you know, how hard it is for them to be employed, the collateral damages and causes that happen. So you come home from jail and you can't be a barber, you can't be a dog, all these things that happen. We want to talk about those things, and then we want to talk about what's the next step forward. You know, women that's being incarcerated. We're going to start these conveners, and we're going to have them all at the table. Like, that is one of the biggest voting blocks in the world that nobody is really tapped into. Formerly incarcerated people, a lot of them don't even realize they can vote. You know how strong they are. It's millions of people who are formerly incarcerated that have really just lost belief in the system. So me being on the inside, understanding how it can make change, how somebody like when you get somebody like Mamdani in office right now, and you get behind them and you push the agenda of what it is, you know, because we're gonna push the agenda. People think, oh, you with the government. Nah, if they do something wrong, I'm gonna be outside protesting Mamdani too, because that's what we do. Like, we've been, just like when de Blasio was in there, we helped de Blasio get in office. When he didn't do what we did, when he was at the presidential, we stood up inside the DNC and screamed that what happened to Eric Gardner, arrest Daniel Pantaleo. When Eric Gardner, just like when Mayor Adams got elected, I was with him too. When he started doing things and letting the police do things to community members, we was outside protesting. So it's no different. As long as he's, you know, doing what he's supposed to do for the community and the agenda for the community, we're gonna stand with him, and we're gonna give our input, and we're gonna stand beside him. But the minute he stops, then we're gonna be outside with the people.
I'm glad you touched on that, because, you know, a lot of activists often fear being absorbed by politics. So how you protecting your voice and integrity while working with this transition team?
I mean, you have to work with people that actually are in positions to put policy, to make the real changes you want. And I've seen it done. Shout out to my brother Jumaane Williams. Like, we worked with Jumaane Williams, you know, we worked with numerous different, you know, my brother Yusuf Salam from the Central Park, the exonerated five. Exactly. So it's people that I know that are in positions that have actually done things in our community. So I know that you have to have those levels of relationships, but those people, they also know that when you do something wrong, we're gonna be outside your office saying that you gotta get it right. We're not gonna, we understand that you have our best interest, but the minute that you don't, then we're always gonna hold you accountable. So I understand people's, you know, fear that because activists get aligned or stand next to certain politicians and people in office that they're going to lose their autonomy. But we just not those type of people. We've been fighting against anything that's not for our people. We're going to fight against every time.
Man, Mayor Young, Mayor Young. Andrew Young was up here. And Andrew Young said the same people who supported him and helped him get elected, he said as soon as he won, they were outside protesting in front of his office. And he was like, what are y'all doing? He goes, they said, you the man now.
Yeah.
So we got to push you to make sure you do what you said you was going to do.
And that's what it is, man. It's about accountability. It's about understanding that I work for the people. I do not work for the government. When I'm inside these rooms, when I'm having conversations, when I'm at these tables, my objective is always to get what's necessary for the people. You know, so it never changes, no matter how much status. That's just not how I'm built. You know, I've done too much time. I've been in the streets. I know the ills and the spills inside our communities, and I want the community to know that every time that I'm at a table, our voice is there. It's not just for me. Like I said, this is a volunteer. I don't get a dime to do this work. It's not for me. It's for me to make sure that the work and the people are represented properly.
You talked about Until Freedom, like you guys standing next to Mayor Adams, and now what you're doing with Mamdani, right? I think when hip hop gets involved, or anybody from the culture gets involved in politics, people pay attention a bit more. But then, like, now people are easily flipped, right? Like how you're on the front of the New York Post, and the support isn't the same. What do you think politics or the system owes hip hop or people from the culture like you that you don't get?
I think like it owes proper representation, right? What happens with a lot of politicians is, shout out to Mamdani again, he didn't run from when this happened and they talked about it. He talked about the necessity to have somebody who's been through the system, you know, at the table with other we, like you said, is a whole transition team of 400 people. It's 20 in our criminal justice and community support, but it's over 400 people, and everybody at that table has a voice, and everybody represents somebody different or a different genre, a different demographic inside of New York City, and those voices need to be at the table. What I think that politicians need to do is elevate certain people, especially in hip hop. Don't leave us up, because what happens is when something goes wrong or they don't, and you standing up there. I've had this conversation with Pat Poos. Pat was like, I was on the front line and I was standing, and these politicians left me out to dry. You know what I'm saying? When you start getting political, too political for hip hop, they move away from you, and the politicians move away from you too, because they don't no longer have the value in you no more, because you lose your value in your community. But for me, I've always stand on what I stand on. So I don't care about what politics think. If I stand by a politician, that means that politician represents what I feel at that moment. The minute that politician doesn't represent what's the needs of my community or what I stand on, then I don't stand on them. So I don't deal with no blanket. Like you always say, I'm not with no party. I don't care about the Democrats, Republicans. I care about people, and especially black people in our communities, because that's what I am. And I know that we are highly impacted by anything that goes on in government. So when people are talking about, oh, I'm not political, listen, if you ain't at the table, then you on the menu. Because that's the reality of the situation. These people are making laws. There are going to be laws passed that are going to affect you. If you're looking at this administration right now, and you don't see how our people are being affected, how people can't afford groceries, how they taking away everything that says black anywhere, black women are getting unemployed at the highest rates ever. Like we getting locked up. Everything that I told y'all they was going to do is what they doing now. So if you still want to play this, that you're not political and you're not going to be involved in the game, then cool. You're just going to be a victim of circumstance. I'm not going to sit around and be a victim of circumstance.
What's one compromise you're not willing to make, even if it creates political tension between you and Mamdani?
I'm not willing to make compromises where you take away things in our communities that are necessary. Right? I'm not willing to make compromises where we know that violence interruption and CMS work has been doing phenomenal work over the last decade in our communities, and you don't support that. I'm not willing to compromise where you don't put certain things inside schools, because this is one of the things I want to implement, is where we have emotional intelligence class. We have alternative to suspension class. We know that once you start putting kids and suspending them in junior high school, they're not coming back to school. So if you're not willing to get the root causes of what crime is in our community, if you're not willing to educate and put the resources in our communities, if I see that those things are you not doing, that's a line in the sand for me. If you're willing to stand by and allow police to abuse people, like Mayor Adams, a police officer punched a woman in the face and he told me she shouldn't have been screaming. Once you start doing that right there, at that point, then me and you, we on different sides of the spectrum. So I don't. That's where I draw the line. When you're willing to allow the police to abuse our community, or you're willing to not to make sure that resources that need to come into our community to prevent violence and prevent crime, if you're not willing to do that, then that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
What convinced you that Zohran Mamdani was serious about transformational change and not just using like progressive language?
That's a good question, right? Because I watched Zohran for a while, and I think I had, after this last election, I had just pretty much just been kind of done with politics and just politicians in general. But I listened to him for a while, right? And I just kept paying attention. And then when he won the Democratic nomination, I said to myself, well, he's going to be our mayor. Right, so I want to have a conversation with him, and through the resources that I have and people that I know, I say, you know what, I want to set up conversations. Shout out to Tamika. I want to set up conversations with black men and people from our community, because they don't even hear him, and he sounds good. But I want to be able to look him in his eyes and have real conversations with him. And he came into those conversations. We had about 2 or 3 of them, and he was very attentive, right? And he was on board with the things that we were saying. It didn't sound like it was political jibber jazz like the average person does. I've been around a lot of these politicians, and he seemed really authentic, and he stayed true to that. And I watched him be attacked for it all the time, and he kept saying, we need violence interrupters. We need to make sure that we have mental health inside our communities. We need to make sure that police is not the first line of defense in every situation. Like, those are things that were intentional. He said, we need to make sure that our school programs, that black boys are graduate, all these things that he was talking about. And when he sat down with us, everybody felt that same authenticity. And then when he built this transition team, and I walked into an auditorium with 400 people, a lot of them grassroots organizers that I've seen throughout the years for the last over a decade, and everybody was in that room, and he sat there and he said, we're going to get criticism, and we're not going to all agree. And I know that. And that's why I'm putting this team together, because I don't want everybody that agrees with me. I want different walks of life. I want different ideologies. I want different ideas. And I want us to come up with what New York actually looks like. Right. And that, for me, was the first time that I've ever seen somebody do it. I watch 3 or 4 mayors come in office. They get their homeboys in the transition team. They get their homeboys in it. But he really put together a apparatus that really is going to represent New York City. So I'm hopeful. I believe that he's really going to try. I don't think that he's beholden to a political system. I don't think he needs money or anything. I think he really wants to see change. So if I'm right, if my gut feeling is right, then we're going to be good for at least the next 4 years. But if not, then I'm going to be outside protesting.
I heard he be getting really challenged behind closed doors. That's what I was told. I keep hearing about this one call with Miss Erica Ford. Erica don't play.
She don't
Erica
play
be on her head.
Listen,
on his head.
She came into the transition meeting, right? And she called him out. She's like, well, I see certain people in here that's been a part of the status quo that you got in your system already. And they ain't been doing nothing. All they doing is, these people they investigating these kids at 13 and 14 for 4 and 5 years instead of coming to us and say, yo, this was going on so we can redirect. They just want to put cases on our babies. Like, we trying to save these babies, and they putting cases on these kids. And he stood up and he said, what you saying is really, I understand what you're saying, and that's what we need. We need your voice, because those are the things that needs to be heard, because a lot of us don't have that perspective, Erica. And she's going to always do that. And even her, she was like, okay, well, maybe we got some, but Erica ain't going to, at all. She's not going to submit to nothing. But, I think at this point, it's a lot of us who are skeptical. It's a lot of people at that table who not here. They don't want status quo. They don't even agree with government or nothing, but they believe that this situation is possible. But once again, if it ain't possible, then we're going to be outside tearing you up.
What about when when Mamdani does things like when he goes and meets with Trump? I know he got a lot of pushback from some people because they were really smiley in the meeting or whatever. And at Until Freedom, y'all are very much like, if we don't rock with you, we don't rock with you. What we say is what we stand on, in your face or behind your back, whatever, right? How do y'all deal with conversations with him about stuff like that? Because now people are like, but you guys are sitting next to him, and that we know of for Until Freedom, y'all, we wouldn't see you guys ha in a meeting with President Trump.
Well, that's why I'm not the mayor, right? That's why when people tell you know what I'm saying? That's why when they say run for political office, I don't want to do that. Because I don't want to do politics. But I understand that being the mayor, understanding that this is the president and federal aid that's needed for New York City has to go through the president. I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm going to sit down as the mayor. I understood it. Would I have done it? No, that's why I wouldn't be the mayor. But understanding, but I believe when I watched that, it looked like Trump was happy to be in his president. It didn't look like he was just happy to be in Trump's president, and he called him a fascist in his face. And to me, he didn't waver from what he said he was doing. He sat down, he told him, this is what we need inside of New York City, and this is and now we've had the conversation, right? It's just like 2 warriors going to war. You see 2 generals go to war. It don't mean that we not at war no more, but we discuss in terms of war. I'm explaining to you, look, if you stop this right now, then we don't got to go to war. And you saying, well, I'm not going to stop that. And you say, okay, so you sure you're not going to stop that? All right, we've met, we shook hands. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, they respect. They might have had a level of respect, and they shook hands, but it didn't stop, Al Pacino from shooting him down at the end of the movie. So that's what happens in these type of situations. He met with the president. Now, if he stops his agenda, if he stops trying to push his agenda because now he's trying to be, cool with Trump, then once again, you just one of those that fell by the wayside, because we watch Eric Adams do that, right? So if you follow them for that, I would be disappointed. I just don't really see it. I think the meeting was, par for the course. It was saying, hey, I met with the president, right? I told him what I wanted, and I'm still going along my agenda. Now, Don't say that I didn't try. And ain't nobody gonna be able to say, oh, look, you're not even savvy enough to sit down with the president. No, I sat down with him, and he said he agreed, right? So, but my agenda has always been my agenda. Now, if he changes his agenda, then we got an issue with him. But if he doesn't, that meeting with Trump is just supposed to be what it's supposed to be, as just being a leader.
That's why I don't like when politicians adopt the language of activists. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna use language like fascism, it does look confusing to people when you say you can work with a fascist, because that's never worked in the history of mankind, and vice versa. You called him a communist. That's why you saw Trump's people so up in arms like, yo, you told us this dude was a communist, but now y'all just buddy inside the Oval Office. But that is politics. But I think I'm just a person that think words matter, man.
I think words do matter. I think it matters more. And that's why we have an inside-outside game, right? It's just like what Malcolm said, you know, if you don't respect Dr. King's piece, then you're going to get what we got over here. We the alternative, right? Like when they show this, Tamika talks about it a lot, they show Stokely Carmichael walking alongside Dr. King, and they both talking about what's going on, and Dr. King said, you know, we're going to rally and we're trying to unify, and Stokely Carmichael's like, burn everything down. No, and they walk in the same path. So the reality is everybody's words may be different, but we still got the same agenda. And as long as his agenda is to stop fascism, I don't care if you stand there and have a conversation with him. If you saying, yo, because you know what I've studied, right? And I didn't understand it. And shout out to I forgot, I went with an organization and we went to study the principles of nonviolence, Dr. King's Kenya Nonviolence. And I never was on board with it. But when I really got down to how strong and how mentally strong it was, what the principles are and how you go about it, how you identify what the issue is. You don't attack the person with it, you attack the issue. And then there's a level of reconciliation. After I attack and we go to war, and even when I win, it's not me winning over you, it's me winning over the situation. And then after I win over the situation, there's supposed to be a level of reconciliation. Because a lot of times people don't even identify their wrongs. And sometimes after they lose, then they may be able to have reconciliation. And when you really sit there and think about it, it takes real strong mind and leadership to have that type of foresight. So when I'm thinking about this right now, of course, Trump to us is the Antichrist. We looking at him, everything he's doing is just wrong to us. But Mamdani seems to have a level of understanding and vision that most leaders don't. You know, he's able to sit there and call you the truth and still smile and still go about what he's doing. And then make you like it. I've never seen somebody get called a fascist and say, well, just call, yeah, that's right, I'm a fascist. This guy's great. You understand what I'm saying? Who else has that level of charisma? Only person I've seen do that was when they told Martin Luther King, he said, we need this to happen. And he said, make me.
Well, we also got to remember Trump is a con artist, too.
Exactly.
So Trump might be playing too.
And I think everybody's playing. Word. You understand what I'm saying? But the thing is, at the end, is who gonna win? I think what happened is Mamdani has became the star, and Trump loves the star. He cozies up to anybody that's a star. That's what he is. He's a groupie. So he, you know what I'm saying? He cozies up to anybody that's. This is the fact. It's just a fact. You know. But at this time, I think Mamdani has a real agenda, and he has the people behind him. Like he's literally going outside in the streets and just putting a mic outside and talking to random people, just trying to figure out what do you want inside New York City. You know what I'm saying? Like I've never seen a mayor that's that interested in really galvanizing the people. You know, so you know we'll see. Like once again, I could be wrong, but you know I'm really usually a good judge of character. You know, sometimes I give people the benefit of the doubt when they never really benefit. But I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully, you know he will. But like again, if he not, we're gonna be out there protesting.
How do you want young organizers watching this moment, watching you, watching Tamika, watching the Erica Fords on this transition team? How do you want them to understand the relationship between protest and policy?
Shout out to Angelo too. He's actually he's on the criminal justice. But I want young protesters to understand, organizers, right? Because I don't want you to just be protesters. I want you to be savvy. I want you to be intelligent. I want you to be strategic. I want you to look at this moment as progress, right? Because we all got to do different things. There's an inside-outside game. And, you know, for years we stood outside and we was the protesters and people said, yeah, y'all can go out there, and they made jokes. You got your picket sign, and it was cool. But we watched incremental change happen, right? We got incremental change, and we protested enough people to where they said, okay, what do y'all want, right? And then they sat down with us. And then we started saying, okay, we want this. And they started, and we started watching capitulate. When we talk about the CMS, Tamika and Erica Ford and AT, they sat out there and protested the mayor until they got millions of dollars put into that CMS system when there was nothing. When they was told that there was no data and they would never get a dime. And now it's up to over $100 million that's given to CMS inside of New York City because people did that work. So I want you to be understanding. I want you to be relentless. I want you to be fearless. But I want you to understand that there's a process and that there's an ultimate goal. And if you just protest and you don't see things going anywhere, if you don't get yourself, if you're not in positions to actually make change, if you don't have the ears and the wherewithal to touch the people who can actually give policy to actually do things for the communities you're fighting for, then you just fighting a fight for nothing. So it's cool. I told people I'm tired of having, victories that, just being the leader that died. We celebrate our leaders dying at 30 and they ain't got nothing, but they kept on. I want to win. I don't want I'm tired of moral victories. When do we actually get the victories where we see some change for our people? I'm tired of the story of we watching our people run out in glory and they say, yeah, y'all gonna be the first ones. We know all y'all gonna die, but it's gonna be brave. You brave because you went out there. And I don't want that no more. Like, when we gonna be strategic and we go through the back door and we actually take over the castle and we put our people in position? When we gonna start doing that? Like, I think our strategy has to change and it has to evolve what we dealing with. It's just like when we look at Trump and we look at Jasmine Crockett and we look at the people that are meeting fire with fire. We can't keep having the conversations about, this is not how it's supposed to. No, this is how it is. You can't fight a fight with one hand behind your back where people got 4 and 5 hands and they jumping you and you saying, but I fought with honor and I did it the right. No, actually you fought and they killed you. Like, I'm tired of just dying. Like, I really want us to win the war. So I want black people and our young activists to be strategic and figure out how do we actually get the things that we're fighting for.
I agree with you. I got one more question because you made me think about something just now. What's the biggest lie people believe about how change actually happens, and what's the hard truth they need to accept about that?
The biggest lie is that people act like if they do nothing, things are going to change. Right? They say, yo, I'm not voting. You don't even need to be involved in that system. I'm not going to be there. I'm not. No, when you take yourself out and you don't have a strategy, like, people been not voting for years, right? There's millions. I know a bunch of people that say, I ain't never vote. But so what have you ever got for not voting? What have you never got for not fighting? And I think, when people think that if you don't go out there and you're not out there, if you protest and it doesn't, no. I've literally watched protests turn into policy. I've literally watched people turn into protesters, get into power. I watched literal frontline activists get into office. Jumaane Williams was an activist outside with us. You know what I'm saying? Yusuf Salaam they were activists on the front line with us at times. So I watched those people get in positions to where they can actually do things. So telling people to not be involved in this system and if you take yourself out, you're more valuable, then they got to come to you. No, if you take yourself out, then they don't even account you, right? Because when they start doing votes, they only account for the people that's voting. So if you one of the other million or 100 million that ain't voting, they don't care, right? So how do you make yourself valuable, right? If you don't add value to something, then you don't have any worth. So I think that's the biggest lie, is that we act like if we not involved with the system, that the system is going to somehow change and it's going to benefit us. Or another thing is that we can money ourselves out of our problem. Money has never changed black people's situation, not individual. We think individual. I know people, I've had conversations, we over here doing this and we over here. Okay, but still 90% of black people don't have nothing. And you got that, right? You and 20 people got that, right? And y'all invested in that. So where is the strategy for 10 and 20 and 30% of black people to be empowered, to be in positions to where they can create generational wealth, to where the majority of us are not struggling, right? To where we see power, to where we're more than 2% of the wealth in America. We've been 2% of the wealth in America since we've been here. When are we going to grow? What is the strategy for that? Right, so that's what I don't want us to individually think our individualism and our individual success and our individual money and worth is going to help black people. It does not. It's how do we collectively come together and create a strategy to where we're building something and we're creating something in structures and organizations and schools and all these things that are really going to change our people. So if we're not doing that and we just because I don't have to do none of this. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? But I understand that if I don't do this and I don't utilize my voice and I don't utilize every platform that I have, then generations of our people are going to be suffering.
Word. Well, it's Mysonne, man. Where can they find you, my brother?
You can find me on Instagram at Mysonne NY General. You can find me on YouTube, same thing. Facebook, same thing.
Yo, keep holding them accountable.
And make sure you go
Podcast.
TMI Podcast that we're going to get LL on real soon. So make sure you follow us on TMI Podcast on iHeart.
Yes,
Radio.
the Black Effect iHeart
That's
Radio
right.
Podcast Network. My man Mysonne, it's the Breakfast Club.
Yes, sir.
Hold up. Every day I wake up.
Wake your ass up. The Breakfast Club.
Y'all finished or y'all done?